I like that.
because we're diving into a piece of writing that takes one of these invisible structures, a lift bridge, on the Welland Canal in Ontario, and treats it like I don't know, a philosophical text.
It is a really special piece of writing. It's titled Bridges of the Welland Canal, Reflections on a New Land. And I want to be clear right off the bat.
Okay.
Do not let that title fool you. This is not some civil engineering report.
Oh, please no. If this were a manual on hydraulic pressure, I would have stayed in bed.
Me too. But this is something so much more intimate. It's a first-person narrative, basically a memoir in miniature, written by someone who is new to the country.
A newcomer?
Right. Someone who looks at a rusty bridge and doesn't just see a way to get across the water. They see a time machine, a commentary on wealth inequality, and even a debate about whether Jeff Bezos is going to live forever.
It covers a lot of ground, but the core lens here is that newness. There's this line right at the beginning that just hooked me immediately.
I think I know the one.
The narrator says, "In a new country, everything I see feels new." And then they drop this incredible sentiment. "Sometimes I felt I should sleep less, just to see more of this country."
Sleep less just to see more. That is such a powerful way to put it. It's that specific anxiety you feel when you're a traveler or, an immigrant.
Feeling of sensory overload.
Totally. You're terrified that if you blink, you're going to miss the lesson. You're going to miss the clue that tells you how this new world works.
It's the absolute opposite of being a local. Locals just sleepwalk through their city. This narrator is hyper awake.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to borrow those eyes. We're going to walk along the Welland Canal and see just how many layers of meaning we can peel back from what looks like a bunch of steel and water.
So let's set the scene. We are at the Welland Canal. And for anyone who hasn't been to Ontario, this is not a cute little stream.
No.
It is a massive ship canal. It connects Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. It's a major industrial artery.
And the narrator isn't just giving us the Wikipedia stats. They are describing the action. They describe the lift bridges rising by name and by design.
I love that phrasing, by name and by design. It implies such authority, order.
Right.
And the narrator is watching these massive cargo ships pass through, and they note the scale. These ships are traveling from one end of the world to the other. They're global citizens, but the canal.
The canal stays.
The canal, the narrator says, remains alone.
That's a lonely image, isn't it? The road facilitates the journey, but never gets to go on it. It's just stuck.
Precisely. And while staring at this lonely structure, the narrator spots a detail that anchors the whole piece. A date, 1820.
1820, that's a long time ago.
It's a different civilization, pre-light bulb, pre-car, pre-Canada, even as a confederation. And the narrator briefly touches on the engineering of water.
Right, the locks.
Yeah, ships go into a lock, water lifts them to Lake Erie or lowers them to Lake Ontario. It's elemental. But the narrator doesn't get lost in the physics. They get stuck on the rust.
Rusted nuts and bolts.
Yes. They mention that the rusted nuts and bolts announce how old it is. And this triggers this profound moment of empathy across time. This is that concept of sonder, realizing that people in the past were as complex and real as you are.
So they stop looking at the bridge itself and start trying to, mind read the builders from 1820?
Kind of. They ask, what was our world like in 1820? But it's not just curiosity, right? There's almost a skepticism there about their capabilities.
A little bit, or maybe just wonder.
Yeah, wonder. The narrator questions the capacity of those ancestors, not just their strength, but their imagination. They wonder, did they have the education to think this way? And even if they did, perhaps they lacked the vision to turn thought into reality.
And then comes a message in a bottle moment.
Right.
The narrator asks, did they know that one day someone from a distant land like me would ride over it?
It's a handshake across 2 centuries. I built this, not knowing who you were. Yeah. You are using this, not knowing who I was. It connects the builder of 1820 to the immigrant of today.
But then, and this is why this text is so good, they don't stay in that peaceful, historic reverie. They get whiplash.
Yeah, the flashback, that part really jarred me when I read it.
It's meant to. They look at this safe, orderly Canadian bridge, and suddenly, boom, they are transported back to their childhood, back to the iron bridges of home.
And the sensory details change completely. The Welland Bridge is, silent, rising by design.
But the childhood bridges, the narrator says when cars passed over them, they made sounds as if they might collapse.
You can just hear that sound, can't you? That clanking, rattling metal. It sounds so precarious.
Terrifying. And it wasn't just the structure itself, it was the whole atmosphere around them. The narrator describes robbers sitting beneath the bridges at night, stopping buses, looting passengers.
So you have this duality. The bridge as a tool of commerce and connection in Canada safe, regulated,
No.
versus the bridge as a trap, a choke point for danger in the narrator's memory.
It really highlights the safety of this new land.
Yeah.
But it also brings up this complex feeling of displacement. You're standing on safe ground, but your internal map is still marked with all these danger zones.
And to make sense of it, the narrator brings in a specific philosopher, Lalan Shah.
Okay, now this is a deep cut if you aren't familiar with Bengali culture.
For sure. Lalan Shah was a ball saint from the 19th century.
So for our listeners, what exactly is a ball?
So the Balls are this fascinating group of wandering minstrels in Bengal. They're mystics. They reject the caste system. They reject organized religion, temples, mosques, all of it. They believe the divine isn't up in the sky somewhere, but inside the human being. They're very anti-establishment, very focused on the transient nature of life.
Right, that context makes the quote so much more powerful. So the narrator quotes Lalan Shah saying, "On another's land, on another's soil, I build a home and live. Brother, I am not the owner of this house."
I am not the owner of this house. That hits hard. It frames the immigrant experience not just as a legal status like, having a visa, but as a spiritual state.
You're walking on infrastructure built by ancestors who aren't your own.
Exactly. You are safe, yes, but you are a guest.
It's a beautiful way to articulate that feeling of imposter syndrome. You're physically there, but you're detached. You're just renting space in history.
Precisely. But the narrator doesn't wallow in that feeling. They switch gears again. They stop looking inward at memories and start looking outward at the neighbors.
The sociology of the canal bank. And they start with the non-human neighbors.
The seagulls and the Canadian geese.
We're living leisurely because, as the narrator points out, they don't have monthly bills to pay.
Which is funny, but it's also real. When you're new to a country trying to figure out credit scores and rent and taxes, the freedom of a goose looks pretty enviable.
But immediately after envying the geese, the narrator looks at the humans. And this is where the text gets quite stark. We see this massive divide.
We do. On one hand, the narrator describes hundreds of people living beside the canal, trapped in poverty.
And I want to pause on the phrasing here, because it's complex. The narrator says these people live there day after day without complaint. And they call this a great virtue. No complaints. They accept life as it is.
See, that's the part I wanted to ask you about. Calling it a virtue. Is it a virtue or is it resignation?
That's the debate, isn't it? From a Western perspective, we might look at that and see a lack of agency or a systemic failure that people are just accepting. We'd say, you should complain, you should change it.
But the narrator, coming from a place with iron bridges and robbers, maybe sees that quiet endurance as a kind of peace. Or maybe it's just silence enforced by circumstance. They don't really judge it. They just catalog it.
And then they immediately contrast it with the other side of the spectrum, the sunny days.
Yes. When the sun comes out, the wealthy people emerge.
Bringing out their antique cars and their dogs, they roam the streets. It's a picture of leisure that rivals the geese.
Antique cars are such a specific symbol of wealth. It's not just a car. It's a machine that requires time, money, maintenance, just for the aesthetic. It's inefficient on purpose.
It screams, I have resources to waste.
Exactly. And the narrator notices this, but the ultimate symbol appears at the edge of Port Colborne.
A cruise ship.
The narrator is mesmerized by it. They see it immediately as another way of enjoying life reserved for the wealthy.
And here's where I really appreciate the honesty of the writing. A lot of modern essays would pivot to some harsh critique of capitalism. They'd say, look at the excess, it's disgusting. But this narrator, they admit, straight up, traveling the world on such a cruise ship is a deep desire of mine.
It's raw honesty. Money buys so many things. That's the line. There's a longing there. They want to be on that ship. They want to be the one observing the world from the deck, not the one standing on the bank watching it pass.
It connects back to the beginning. Sleep less, see more. Money buys the ability to see more. It buys experience.
So we have this tension between the struggling poor and the cruising wealthy, but then the narrator stumbles upon something that levels the playing field completely.
The great equalizer.
They find a photo frame beside a closed bridge.
A memorial. Probably for someone who died right there.
And the reaction to this is really interesting. The narrator says death feels terribly out of place in such a beautiful city.
Which suggests that the narrator sees this new land as a place where things should be perfect, where the ugliness of death shouldn't intrude.
It breaks the illusion of the safe, orderly, wealthy society. And this breakage sends the narrator down a rabbit hole that I really did not see coming.
I mean, here.
We go from a photo frame on a canal bank to Jeff Bezos.
It is a wild pivot. The narrator starts listing them. Musk, Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Bezos. And the speculation is that these guys might live to be 200 years old.
They see these tech titans as the first humans who might challenge death itself.
It's such a fascinating connection to make. You're standing by a 200-year-old bridge thinking about a dead stranger, and suddenly you're wondering if billionaires will solve mortality.
I think it connects back to the cruise ship. If money can buy experience, if money can buy leisure, can money buy time? Can it buy forever?
The narrator asks, why can't people live forever, their lives, as long as a woman's flowing hair? That's such a poetic image.
It's so lyrical, and it contrasts so sharply with the rusted nuts and bolts of the bridge. The bridge survives 200 years. The human does not.
Unless you have enough billions. That's the question they're posing.
It's the quest for immortality. But while the narrator is thinking about billionaires living forever, reality intrudes again in the form of the ships themselves.
Right. They look at the gigantic cargo ships passing by, and they don't look like engineering marvels anymore. They look like monsters.
And here we get another pop culture reference, Captain Phillips.
Yes, the Tom Hanks movie about Somali pirates.
It's interesting how the narrator's mind works. They see the ship and immediately associate it with danger, with survival, with the cinematic depiction of conflict. How Captain Phillips survived, the movie was extraordinary.
It's like they're constantly mediating their experience of this new land through the stories they already know. Movies, childhood memories, songs. It grounds the experience.
It does. These massive ships aren't just abstract cargo. They are potential dramas floating by. It reminds us that outside this peaceful canal, the world is still dangerous.
Exactly. And as the day winds down in the narrative, the narrator keeps walking. They see people on bicycles, a flock of wild geese with chicks of family, and they arrive at a place called Allenburg.
Okay, this part made me laugh. The narrator admits a little misunderstanding here.
It's a charming moment. They thought Allenburg was named after the American poet Allen Ginsberg.
Which would be a very cool name for a canal lock, to be honest. The Howl Lock.
It would be very counterculture. But alas, reality is more boring. They learned that Allenburg was just a high official associated with the bridge. Bureaucracy wins over poetry.
But the poetry doesn't leave the narrator. Because as the sun sets, they start reflecting on the geography of the water itself.
This is the closing metaphor. The canal begins at Lake Erie and ends at Lake Ontario. The water flows from one to the other.
And the narrator sees this as the ultimate story. Just as life has a beginning and an end, so does every story on this earth.
It circles right back to that mortality theme. You can't stop the water flowing to Lake Ontario, and you can't stop the story from ending, not even if you're Elon Musk.
But the narrator refuses to leave it on a dark note. The ending of this piece is incredibly hopeful, almost mystical. They describe stories as bohemian.
Like mischievous boys, like lost poems.
And the promise is that these stories will return. They'll return bearing messages of compassion and love. And then there is this specific, beautiful reference to the Chetak birds.
All right, the Chetak birds will no longer run endlessly. I actually had to look this one up. Can you explain what a Chetak bird is?
Oh, this is a beautiful symbol. In Indian mythology and folklore, the Chetak bird is a bird that refuses to drink water from the earth. It won't drink from a river or a lake or a puddle.
So what does it drink?
It only drinks rainwater, specifically the first drops of rain.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is. It's a symbol of intense, agonizing longing. The bird is always looking up, crying out for the clouds. It represents a thirst that the ordinary world cannot satisfy.
So when the narrator says that Chetak birds will no longer run endlessly, they're saying the thirst is quenched.
Exactly. It implies satisfaction, peace. The longing, whether it's for home or understanding or for immortality, it settles. Happiness will reveal itself in the inner courtyards of human hearts.
That is a beautiful place to end a walk by the canal.
It really is. It transforms the infrastructure. It's no longer just steel and water. It's a vessel for human emotion.
So let's just unpack what we've walked through. We started with a newcomer, wine-eyed, wanting to sleep less and see more.
We looked at a bridge from 1820 and wondered if the builders could ever have imagined us.
We juxtaposed the safety of Canada with the dangerous iron bridges of the past.
We looked at the inequality between the people living in poverty by the bank and the billionaires who might live forever.
And we ended with a case of mistaken identity, Ginsberg versus Allenburg, and a realization that, like the water, we're all just flowing through.
What strikes me most looking at this whole text is that idea of the bridge as a meeting point, not just for cars or ships, but for time.
How so?
The narrator is standing there holding their childhood in one hand and the future of biohacking billionaires in the other, and the bridge just holds it all up.
It makes you think about our role in all this. We are the travelers. As Lalan Shah said, we are not the owners of the house, we're just passing through.
We're guests,
Okay.
and whether we are riding a rusted bicycle or a luxury cruise ship, we are all heading toward our own Lake Ontario.
And we are crossing bridges built by people who couldn't possibly imagine our lives.
Which begs the question, doesn't it?
What's that?
The narrator is obsessed with these billionaires challenging death. If they succeed, if humans do start living for 1,000 years, what happens to the bridges?
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. We build bridges like the one in Welland to outlast us. They are monuments to our mortality because they stay when we go. We build them for the next generation.
But if we stay?
If we stay, if we live as long as the concrete, do the bridges lose their meaning? If you live forever, do you ever really need to leave a mark for the future?
That is a heavy thought. If we never leave, maybe we stop building things for the people coming next.
Something to think about next time you're stuck waiting for a lift bridge to go down.
Absolutely. Look at the rust. Think about the builder and remember, sleep less, see more. Thank you for taking this walk with us.
See you on the next deep dive.